She texted her ex by mistake, but the reply came from an Italian mafia boss. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories every week. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain was steady against the window, a soft rhythm filling the small apartment in downtown Chicago. The streetlights below glowed amber through the fog, and inside, Amelia Reed sat on the edge of her couch with her phone in her hand. The digital clock blinked 12:47 a.m. She should have been asleep. Instead, her thumb hovered above a name she swore she had erased months ago, Ethan, her ex, the one who had promised forever and left her with silence. One glass of wine too many had blurred her judgment, and loneliness did the rest. She sighed, typed out the words she had swallowed for weeks. I still miss you. Her finger trembled as she pressed send. The screen blinked once, twice, then confirmed the message had gone through. For a moment, nothing. Just the hum of rain and the faint ticking of the heater. Then her phone buzzed. A reply. Who is this? Her heart lurched. Ethan knew her number. That should not have been his response. Confused, she typed back. It's Amelia. You know who I am. Another buzz. I think you have the wrong number. But tell me, Amelia, why are you awake at midnight missing someone who does not deserve you? She froze. The tone was calm, self-assured, older. Something about the phrasing carried authority, even danger. She almost deleted the thread, but curiosity pulled her closer. Sorry, she wrote. I did not mean to bother you. A pause. Then came the final message that would change her life. You are not bothering me. Sometimes, strangers are better listeners than ghosts. My name is Luca. Outside, a black car rolled slowly past her building. She did not notice it yet, nor the man sitting inside, reading the same message on his second phone. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hid more than it revealed, and whispered to himself, So, Amelia Reed, fate finally texts first. Oh, and that was how a single mistaken message found its way to Luca Moretti, heir to one of Italy's most powerful mafia families, turning a quiet night of regret into the beginning of a love that would defy danger, class, and destiny. Love millionaire, 39 foot said, A.D. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds of Amelia's small apartment. Her head ached from the wine, but her thoughts were not on the hangover. They were on the messages from last night, the ones from Luca. She scrolled through the thread again, half convinced it had all been some strange dream. But there it was, plain as day, his last text still glowing on the screen. Sometimes strangers are better listeners than ghosts. She let out a nervous laugh and dropped her phone on the couch. Great, Amelia, she muttered. You drunk, texted a stranger who sounds like he lives in a noir movie. Still, she could not shake the warmth that had bloomed in her chest after reading his words. It had been months since anyone spoke to her with that kind of empathy. No judgment, no pity, just understanding. Her alarm buzzed again, reminding her that rent was due in 5 days. She pulled herself together, threw on her thrift store coat, and hurried down the narrow staircase to the cafe where she worked part-time. The morning air was sharp, biting her cheeks as she jogged to catch the crosswalk light. Downtown was already alive, honking cars, steaming vents, and the hum of Monday exhaustion. Inside the cafe, the espresso machine hissed, and the scent of roasted beans wrapped around her like a blanket. Amelia tied her apron, forcing a smile. Morning, Kevin, she said to her manager, who grunted without looking up. She moved through the motions, pouring lattes, wiping counters, calling out orders, but her mind kept drifting back to the man behind that mysterious text. Who was he really? Around noon, as the line finally thinned, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She glanced at the screen and froze. A new message. How is your day, Amelia? Her breath caught. She typed back before her brain could stop her. Busy. Coffee. Customers. Chaos. You? The reply came within seconds. Meetings. People who talk too much and say too little. I prefer our conversation. She smiled despite herself. Smooth talker, she whispered, hiding her phone as Kevin walked by. Hours passed. and the texts continued small exchanges between lattes and closing time. He asked about her dreams, her art, the city she loved but could not afford. She asked nothing about him, sensing instinctively that he was a man who revealed only what he chose to. When her shift ended, she walked home through the fading light. The street lamps flickered on, one by one, like tiny promises. Her phone buzzed again. Walk safe. Chicago can be unkind after dark. She paused in the middle of the sidewalk, glancing around. How would he know I am walking? She whispered, unease curling in her stomach. She typed, "Are you nearby?" This time, no answer, just the blinking cursor on the screen. A black sedan rolled slowly past, its windows tinted. She felt the hairs on her neck rise, but shook the thought away. She was tired, imagining things. When she reached her apartment door, her phone buzzed one last time. "You are home now. Good. Rest, Amelia." Her fingers went cold. She looked down at the text, confusion turning to a strange blend of fear and fascination. "Who are you, Luca?" she whispered to the empty room. Across town, inside a dimly lit suite overlooking the skyline, Luca Moretti set down his phone. He watched the city lights flicker through the glass, his reflection half-shadowed. A faint smile played on his lips as he murmured, "Sleep well, little artist. You have no idea what door you have just opened." The next few days slipped by quietly, though Amelia found herself checking her phone more often than she cared to admit. Luca never texted without reason. His messages were short, deliberate, and oddly comforting. Each one felt like a line from a book written just for her. "Did you paint today? People forget to notice small things. Do not be one of them. You have an artist's soul, Amelia. That is rarer than gold." She had started to paint again tiny sketches on napkins between coffee orders, the kind of small joy she had lost when life became about bills and survival. Somehow, this stranger had reminded her that she still had color inside her. On Friday afternoon, while wiping down tables, she heard the bell over the cafe door ring. She looked up and froze. A man in a dark coat and tailored gloves stood in the entryway, rain dripping from his shoulders. His presence filled the room without a word. His eyes, gray, unreadable, swept the space before landing on her. "Can I help you?" she asked, trying to sound casual. He smiled faintly. "Cappuccino, double shot." His voice carried a subtle accent, Italian, smooth, precise. As she made the drink, she felt his gaze linger, steady but not invasive. When she placed the cup on the counter, their fingers brushed. A spark, real and unnerving. "Thank you," he said, eyes never leaving hers. "Amelia." Her breath caught. "How do you know my name?" He tilted his head slightly. "It is on your name tag." Then, before she could say another word, he added, "I like your sketches. The one of the skyline on the napkin." Her eyes widened. "You have been here before?" He only smiled and walked out into the rain. She hurried to the window, but the sidewalk was already empty, the sound of a car engine fading into the distance. That night, as thunder rolled across the city, her phone buzzed again. "I hope the cappuccino was not too bitter." Her pulse quickened. It was him. She typed, "That was you, wasn't it?" "Guilty." She hesitated. "Why come here?" "To see if the girl behind the messages was real." She stared at the screen, unsure what to feel. Fear? Curiosity? Both. She wrote, "You cannot just show up at my job like that. You are right. Forgive me. It will not happen again." But even through the screen, she sensed the lie. 2 days later, a small package appeared at her doorstep. No return address, only her name in neat handwriting. Inside was a set of brushes, high-quality ones, and a note. "For the artist who paints with honesty, use them well. L." She pressed the note to her chest, torn between wonder and unease. Whoever Luca was, he knew too much, and yet some part of her did not want him to stop. Across town, Luca stood on the balcony of a high-rise suite, phone in hand, watching the rain blur the city lights. "She is curious now," he said quietly. A man in a black suit behind him replied, "Sir, should we continue the surveillance?" Luca's gaze stayed on the skyline. "No, she will reach out on her own. She always does." In the small apartment miles away, Amelia dipped her new brushes into paint, unaware that somewhere in the shadows, someone was already watching over her, not as a threat, but as a man who had not felt alive until a stranger texted him by mistake. By the following week, Amelia had almost convinced herself that everything with Luca was just a strange, fleeting story, something she would laugh about years later. But that illusion vanished one Thursday afternoon. It was just after 5 when the cafe's bell chimed again. The rain had stopped, and sunlight spilled through the window in soft ribbons. She looked up from the counter, and there he was, Luca Moretti, the man in the dark coat, standing where the light caught the edges of his sharp jaw and calm gray eyes. He smiled slightly. "You remember me." Her heart skipped a beat. "Hard to forget the man who knows where I work." He chuckled, low and controlled. "I'm sorry for that. It was not meant to scare you." "Then what was it meant to do?" she asked, crossing her arms. Luca leaned against the counter, his voice smooth but quiet enough for only her to hear. "To meet you properly." He ordered another cappuccino, and when she turned to make it, she could feel his gaze steady, unreadable, as if he was memorizing every movement. When she handed him the cup, he set down a folded envelope beside it. "What is this?" she asked. "An invitation," he said simply. "There is an art exhibition tomorrow night. You once told me you have not been to one in years." Her eyebrows rose. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything you tell me," he replied. "Come if you want. No strings." She hesitated. Every rational thought screamed to say no. Yet something in his voice, gentle but certain, made her whisper, "Maybe." He smiled, paid in cash, and left without another word. That night, Amelia sat on her couch, the envelope still unopened. Curiosity won. Inside was a sleek black card with embossed letters, La Galleria Venezia, private event. The address was across the river, in the upscale district where she had never dared to step. Friday evening arrived with unexpected nerves. She almost stayed home twice, but something pulled her forward. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was hope. She put on her one good dress, a soft blue one she had saved for job interviews, and took the train. The gallery glowed like a dream, all marble floors and crystal lights. The scent of white roses filled the air. Guests mingled in designer suits, laughter echoing against the walls lined with abstract paintings. She felt out of place the moment she walked in. Then she saw him, Luca, standing near the center, dressed in a black suit that fit like armor. When his eyes met hers, the noise around her dimmed. "You came," he said, walking toward her. "I almost did not," she admitted. "But you did," he said, offering his arm. "That is what matters." He guided her through the exhibit, his hand resting lightly at her back. She found herself relaxing as he spoke not about business, not about money, but about art, travel, and the kind of loneliness that wealth could not fix. There was something disarming about him, something that felt both dangerous and deeply human. Halfway through the night, an older man approached them. He spoke to Luca in Italian, his tone sharp. Amelia could not understand the words, but she could see the tension in Luca's jaw. The man walked away, leaving an unspoken heaviness between them. "Friend of yours?" she asked carefully. "Something like that," he said, forcing a faint smile. "Family business." When she tried to press further, he changed the subject, leading her to a quiet corner where a single painting hung a city skyline under rain, rendered in muted blues and golds. "It is yours," he said. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I bought it for you," he replied. "You told me you loved that view from your apartment. Now you can have it here forever." Her throat tightened. "Luca, that is, too much." He looked at her, expression soft but intense. "For me, it is nothing. For you, it means something." For a moment, neither spoke. Then her phone buzzed in her purse, breaking the spell. She glanced at the screen, a news alert flashing headlines. "Moretti family under federal investigation, Mafia connections alleged." The color drained from her face. She looked at him, and the world seemed to tilt. "Luca," she whispered. "Who are you really?" He met her gaze, calm but unflinching. "The man you have been talking to every night," he said softly. "But the rest is complicated." Around them, the chatter of guests faded into the background hum of a song ending. He stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "I did not plan this, Amelia. You texted the wrong number, and somehow you reached the one man who never believed in fate until now." Her hands trembled. She wanted to run, but her heart refused to move. The stranger, who had seemed so kind, so mysterious, was now standing before her with truth in his eyes and power in every shadow behind him. That night, as she left the gallery, rain began to fall again. For the first time, she was not sure if she was walking away from danger or straight into it. The night after the gallery felt like a fever she could not shake. Amelia lay awake, the sound of rain against the window keeping her company. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's face, the calm certainty in his eyes when he said, "It is complicated." By morning, the story had exploded across every news site. The Moretti family, long whispered to be tied to organized crime in Italy, was now under federal investigation. Photographs of Luca appeared beside headlines, calling him the ghost heir. She shut her laptop, heart pounding. The man I met, the man who bought me a painting, he was part of that world. But he had also been the man who told her to dream again, who sent her brushes, who spoke to her like she mattered. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won again. She answered. "Amelia," his voice came low and steady. "You should not believe everything you read." She sat up straight. "Then tell me what to believe, Luca. Who are you really?" Silence stretched. Then he said softly, "A man trying to leave a world that does not let people go easily." She swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because you talked to me like I was human," he said. "No one has done that in a very long time." She hesitated. "Luca, this is dangerous. I saw those cars outside my building. I do not want to be part of this." "You already are," he said quietly, "and I am sorry for that. But I will keep you safe. You have my word." "I..." Before she could respond, the line went dead. For days after, she saw nothing of him, only silence. The news grew worse. Arrests in Milan, investigations in New York, the Moretti empire unraveling. She told herself it was over. Whatever connection they had was buried under the weight of his secrets. Then one evening, as she left the cafe, she saw him again. Luca stood across the street. No bodyguards this time, no tailored coat, just a man in a black sweater, his hair damp from the drizzle. When their eyes met, he raised a hand, not a wave, just a quiet acknowledgement. She crossed the street before she could think twice. "You should not be here," she said. "I had to see you," he replied. "I am leaving tonight." "Leaving where?" "Back to Italy," he said. "To face what I should have faced long ago. I am turning myself in." Her chest tightened. "You are serious?" He nodded. "It is the only way to protect what is left of my family, and to make sure no one comes after you." Tears blurred her vision. "You do not have to do this for me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I do." He reached into his pocket and handed her something, a small silver locket. "Keep this. Inside is a number. When it is over, if I can, I will call you." "Luca," her voice broke. He stepped closer, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You texted the wrong man, Amelia, but maybe you found the right heart." Before she could reply, he turned and disappeared into the rain. That night, she sat by her window again, clutching the locket in her palm. The city outside was alive with sirens, but for the first time, she felt an odd calm. The stranger she met by mistake had changed everything, her art, her courage, her belief that even in darkness, people could choose light. Weeks later, a single text appeared on her phone. "Venice. Sunset. Look for the bridge." Her breath caught. No name, no signature, but she knew. Luca was alive, and the story that began with one wrong message was not over yet. 2 months later, spring crept quietly across the city. The cafe windows were filled with daffodils, and the cold wind that had once haunted Amelia's nights finally began to soften. But she was not the same girl who used to stare at her phone waiting for a message. Her art had returned, her sketches brighter, her lines bolder. Still, some nights she would catch herself tracing the edge of the silver locket around her neck and wonder if Luca Moretti was a memory or a promise. The text he had sent weeks ago never left her mind. "Venice. Sunset. Look for the bridge." She tried to convince herself it was only a dream, a final gesture before he vanished forever. But one evening, as she closed the cafe, something in her heart whispered, "Go." By the end of the week, she was on a plane bound for Italy. The moment the wheels touched down, her chest tightened with both fear and wonder. The air in Venice smelled of salt and rain, the canals glimmering like sheets of glass beneath the fading Sunday. She followed the directions as if guided by fate itself past narrow alleys, the soft murmur of gondoliers, and the hum of violins drifting from open windows. When she reached the Rialto Bridge, the sun was already sinking behind the terracotta rooftops. painting the water in gold. And then she saw him. Luca stood at the center of the bridge, no longer the sharp, shadowed figure she had met in Chicago. His hair was longer, his suit simpler, his face marked with quiet exhaustion and something else. Peace. She stopped a few steps away. "I was not sure this was real," she said softly. "It is," he replied, "more real than anything I have ever known." She searched his eyes, looking for the man she once feared. "They said you were gone, that you turned yourself in." "I did," he said. "I gave them what they needed. The organization is finished. I am free, but not clean. Not yet." Her throat tightened. "Then why ask me to come here?" "Because I needed you to see who I am without that world," he said. "A man who lost everything but finally found something worth living for." For a long moment, neither spoke. The crowd moved around them, tourists snapping pictures, lovers laughing, gondolas gliding below. But for Amelia, time slowed. "I do not know if I can trust this," she whispered. "You lied to me, Luca." "I know," he said quietly, "and I hate myself for it. But every word I ever said about you, about your art, about the way you see light in broken things, that was the truth." Tears filled her eyes. "You do not get to say that after what you did." He nodded, accepting the pain in her voice. "Then let me show you, not say it." From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small envelope and handed it to her. Inside was a letter of donation, an art scholarship fund in her name, created for struggling artists in Chicago. At the bottom, in elegant handwriting, it read, "The Amelia Reed Foundation, established by L. Moretti." She looked up, speechless. "It is the least I can do," he said. "You reminded me that creation is stronger than destruction." Her hands trembled around the letter. "Why me, Luca? Why keep doing this?" He took a step closer, his voice low but steady. "Because the night you texted the wrong number, you gave me a reason to be a better man. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that I can be." Amelia stood there, caught between disbelief and a fragile, rising hope. The wind from the canal brushed her hair as the sun disappeared completely. Finally, she whispered, "Then start by walking with me." Luca smiled a real smile this time and offered his hand. As they crossed the bridge together, Venice shimmered beneath them, a city built on water and second chances. And somewhere inside her, Amelia knew that one mistake had rewritten both their destinies forever. The following weeks in Venice felt like living inside a painting. The canals glittered beneath morning light, and the smell of espresso and wet stone lingered in the air. For the first time in years, Amelia allowed herself to breathe. She rented a small studio above a flower shop, its windows opening to the narrow street where gondoliers sang softly in Italian. And every evening, like clockwork, Luca would appear at her door. He never came empty-handed. Sometimes he brought pastries from a bakery near the square. Other times a small sketchbook or fresh tulips from the vendor below. They would talk for hours about art, about redemption, about how two lives that never should have crossed somehow did. But peace did not come without shadows. Luca was still under watch. The police had released him pending final testimony. But every few days, men in plain clothes lingered near the street corners, pretending to read newspapers. He noticed them. He just never spoke of it. One afternoon, as they shared coffee on the balcony, Amelia finally asked, "What happens after your testimony?" He looked out over the water, his expression unreadable. "If the court accepts my cooperation, I will be free. If not, there may be prison time, maybe years." She gripped the cup tighter. "You mean you could go back?" He nodded slowly. "It would not be forever, but it would be enough to lose what we have just begun." Silence hung between them, broken only by the hum of the city below. Amelia reached for his hand. "Then we will take it one day at a time. I spent half my life waiting for someone who never showed up. I am not doing that again. If you have to go, I will still be here when you return." Luca turned toward her, surprise flickering across his face. "You would wait for me?" "I would not call it waiting," she said softly. "I would call it believing." Something shifted in his gaze, gratitude mixed with disbelief. "You are too good for the world I came from, Amelia." She smiled faintly. "Then leave it for good." That evening, they walked along the canal as the sky turned violet. Street musicians played violins, and laughter spilled from nearby cafes. It could have been any ordinary night, yet it felt extraordinary because it was fragile, because both of them knew it might not last. When they reached the square, Luca stopped and faced her. "There is something I have to tell you." he said quietly. Tomorrow, I testify. After that, I may be moved to protective custody until the verdict. Her chest tightened, but she nodded. Then tonight is ours. They spent the rest of the evening wandering through the quiet streets, hand in hand. For once, Luca spoke of his past without hiding. He told her about growing up in Milan, about the weight of a family name that had shaped his life before he could choose for himself. He spoke of guilt and choices and how one message from a stranger had broken a silence he never realized was killing him. When the clock struck midnight, they stood again on the Rialto Bridge, the same place they had met weeks ago. The moonlight rippled across the water, and a soft breeze brushed her hair. I do not know what will happen tomorrow, he said. But if I walk out of that courtroom free, I want to start over with you. Amelia's eyes glistened. Then promise me something. Anything. No more lies. No more secrets. Just truth, even when it hurts. He reached up and cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. You have my word. Their lips met, slow and certain, under the Venetian moon. It was not the ending of their story, just the fragile heartbeat before everything changed again. And as the night wind swept across the bridge, Amelia realized that sometimes even the wrong message could lead you exactly where you were meant to be. The morning of Luca's testimony arrived with a sky the color of ash. The city of Venice seemed to hold its breath. Amelia stood on the balcony of her small studio, watching as police boats moved silently through the canal below. Somewhere beyond the water and stone bridges, Luca was being escorted to the courthouse. She wished she could be there, but he had insisted she stay away. Do not come, he had said the night before. It will be chaos. I need to face this alone. Still, she waited by the window, clutching her coffee cup like it was an anchor. The hours crawled by. Church bells rang noon, then 1, then 2. Finally, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It is done. Ugh. Her knees went weak with relief. She texted back instantly. Where are you? On my way to you. Half an hour later, a knock sounded at her door. When she opened it, Luca stood there, pale but smiling. The shadows that had haunted his face seemed lighter. It is over? She asked, barely breathing. He nodded. The testimony went through. They accepted everything. I am officially free. Tears welled in her eyes as she pulled him into her arms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city outside erupted in life again, bells, laughter, footsteps, and it felt as though Venice itself had been waiting for this. Later that evening, they sat by the canal, the sunset burning orange across the water. He held her hand, tracing small circles against her skin. You should know, he said quietly, my freedom came with a price. Everything tied to the Moretti name is gone. The estates, the accounts, the power. I have nothing now. She turned to him and smiled softly. That means you finally have something real. You have a life that is yours. He looked at her, eyes glinting with something like wonder. And you would still stay? After all of it? Amelia laughed through the tears she had been holding back. Luca, I never wanted your money. I just wanted the man who answered my wrong text. For the first time, he laughed a sound full of disbelief and hope all at once. Then the universe truly made a mistake worth keeping. They spent the next days rebuilding something ordinary and beautiful. He found work at a logistics firm, far removed from the chaos of his old life. She began painting again, using the brushes he had once sent her. Her small studio slowly filled with light and color, but Luca could not escape every shadow. One evening, as they walked home from the market, a black car turned the corner too slowly, its windows tinted. Amelia froze, instinctively gripping his arm. He stepped in front of her, body tense. The car paused for a second, then drove away. Old ghosts, he murmured. But they will fade. That night, she could not sleep. The image of that car lingered, but so did his words. Old ghosts fade. Maybe they would. Maybe some stories needed time to heal. Before dawn, she slipped out of bed and stood by the window. Luca stirred behind her, voice husky with sleep. You are painting again? She smiled, trying to capture this moment before it disappears. What moment? This one, she said softly, turning to him. The one where we are free. He crossed the room, wrapped his arms around her and whispered, Then let us make sure it lasts. Outside, Venice shimmered awake under the first rays of light, and for the first time since the night she texted the wrong number, Amelia Reed no longer felt lost. She felt chosen by fate, by mistake, by love. A year passed, quietly but fully, as if the world had finally decided to give them peace. Venice had become their home, its winding canals, its faded walls, its patient rhythm. Amelia's art had grown from sketches into full canvases, each one filled with fragments of their story, rain-streaked windows, bridges at sunset, reflections that blurred the line between loss and grace. Luca worked days at the port, a steady job that demanded little fame and offered him what he valued most: anonymity. Every morning, he would walk her to her studio, his hand resting lightly at her back, and she would pretend not to notice that he lingered for a few seconds longer before letting go. At night, they cooked together, argued about pasta sauces, and laughed about everything they once feared. It was not a grand life, but it was theirs. One afternoon, as she prepared for her first solo exhibition, Amelia found an envelope on her work table. No name, just a pressed white lily inside, and a small note in his familiar handwriting. "Meet me where it all began." Her heart thudded. She closed the gallery early and hurried across the city, past the vendors and narrow alleys that now felt like old friends. The sun was setting when she reached the Rialto Bridge. Luca was waiting at the center, dressed simply, his hair swept back by the wind. When he saw her, his face softened. "You remember," he said. "How could I forget?" she replied. He held her gaze for a long moment. "A year ago, I stood here thinking I had nothing left. You changed that." Amelia smiled through tears. "You answered a message that was never meant for you." He laughed softly. "Maybe fate sent it anyway." From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a delicate ring, a single diamond set in silver, simple yet beautiful. Her breath caught. "Luca." He took her hands, his voice low but steady. "I do not have a name that opens doors anymore. I cannot promise luxury, only truth, and a home that will always have room for you. So, Amelia Reed, will you marry me?" She felt tears blur her vision as the city lights shimmered on the water below. The world seemed to fall away until it was just the two of them, the girl who sent a wrong text and the man who chose to answer it. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Luca slipped the ring onto her finger, his eyes glistening. Around them, a gondolier passing under the bridge began to sing, his voice carrying through the twilight air like a blessing. He drew her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Wrong number," he said with a smile. "Right destiny." They stayed there until the sky turned to indigo, until laughter and music filled the night. When they finally walked home hand in hand, it was not toward the past or the shadows that had once followed them. It was toward a future built from the most impossible beginning. Later, in the quiet of their apartment, Amelia hung her newest painting on the wall. It showed the bridge at sunset, two silhouettes standing together against the gold light. In the corner, she had written a small line of text. "For the man who answered, and the mistake that became my miracle." As she stepped back to look at it, Luca came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You always capture the truth," he said softly. She leaned into him, smiling. "Because you taught me that even in the wrong message, the heart can still find the right person." And as the bells of Venice echoed through the night, their story, their strange, fated mistake, finally found its perfect ending.